War is not a solution.
Right, war is never the solution, and I think
Though we are sitting in the war room. So one, to assume that Shah is going to come back and Iran is going to be fine, I think it's a big miscalculation.
the other Middle Eastern countries don't really seem that keen in being part of this conflict as of now.
Well, they don't, it's not that they are not keen, it's just that they're silent. It
Right.
has huge repercussions. You might have Iran bombing, Gulf countries. But Pakistan is not betraying the Ummah because they don't consider Shias to be part of the Ummah. They consider Sunni to be part of the Ummah. Pakistan would love to see Iran getting destroyed as much as Iran would love Pakistan getting destroyed. And, because the Iranians had tasted Mossadegh, they had tasted a democratic prime minister. So they found it extremely choking, and once the aspirations of people are not met, the basic needs of people are not met, especially in rural areas. There, Iran was still quite the rural-urban disparity was quite big. So in that sense, then people had no other option. So all you needed was opium of religion to oust them, and that is exactly what happened.
That is exactly how the 1917 Islamic Revolution happened. How does the current warlike situation that is unfolding in the Middle East, what does that lead to now? Hello and welcome to the Pamphlet War Room. मैं हूँ निर्वा मेहता और आज हमारे साथ है राजा मुनीब.
Hello, Nirwa.
Hello, welcome back to the Pamphlet War Room.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Yes, so let us talk about Iran और Israel. क्या हो रहा है? Let us start with the beginning. ठीक है? I want to know about how Iran, which was once a Zoroastrian nation, how it ended up being an Islamic republic.
Well, you have to go back to the Crusades or of when the Islamic,
Right, the expansion
Crusades
is
happened.
right.
Expansion happened. The Arabs started it. So it was a Rashidun
The caliphate, correct.
caliphate under them the Abbasid caliphate. So they basically came into Iran and they turned the Persians from Zoroastrian to Sunnis, to basically Muslims. So till about 15th century, the Iranians were predominantly Sunni Muslims. It's only after the Safavids dynasty, which is basically in Adrabil, part of Iran, which is closer to the Azerbaijan area, they started exerting their influence. They are the ones who converted, over the next 1500 to about 1700 odd years, that or to 250 years old rule they had. They are the ones who, you can say, basically laid the foundation of what you call today is modern Iran. So they made it a predominantly Shia modern Iranian state. And from there, then it has been carrying on to the only Shia country, a predominant Shia Muslim country in the Middle East. So that's where the history starts. I mean, that's where we
Right,
track
but
it.
so if we talk about the modern history of Iran, right? So in 1958, there was a coup which put with the US backed. It's said that
Yeah, the Mossadegh was taken out of power.
right. So what were the US's concerns to carry that out? What were their concerns that they replaced the current the prime minister of Iran with the monarchy?
Predominantly, it was not the US. Predominantly, it was the British.
Correct.
And then
UK
later, the British, the US backed the British, and it had to do with oil. So what Mossadegh wanted was, because if you see from 1941 onwards, right, once the Britishers and the Britishers and the Americans, and the Russians, not the Americans, sorry, the Britishers and the Russians in 1941 disposed of the king, and they got Reza Pahlavi as the king, because his father, they were thinking, they basically thought that he is more pro-Nazi. That's what the perception was. But when you look at what Mossadegh did was he nationalized all the oil, Iranian oil. So he wanted greater control of it because 40% of Iranian oil was owned by a British company. And once Mossadegh went ahead and he did that, the Britishers are absolutely not happy. So they wanted Mossadegh out for a very long time till about Truman was there. He was not on the same page with the Britishers as he was president. But when Eisenhower came on board, when he became the president of US, that's when the Americans and the Britishers came on the same page because their fear was that he can firmly go into the Soviet bloc. He has a communist mindset. his basically. So Iran might fall into the communist fold. And obviously Britishers were losing oil. They had lost 40% of their hold on Iranian oil. So that's when, from 1953 onwards, they triggered this coup against Mossadegh. And finally, in 1958, they were successful in ousting him and bringing in the Shah.
So, how was the Shah's rule back then? Was it, considering it was Iran was predominantly Shia state in surrounded by Sunni-dominated countries, Arab countries? How do you think was this relationship, the Iran's relationship with the neighboring countries back then?
Not very good. Not very good. With the neighboring countries, it was not very good. Two reasons: when the Shah came in, the Shah was backed by the Americans. So with Shah came a lot of American weapons, came a lot of American money, the oil money, everything. So Shah became more and more popular in the Middle East. So obviously, once he was popular, Iran was getting stronger and stronger. So it was not liked by the other Gulf countries at all. So that is one. Two is that, true to any monarch, right, there was a huge disconnect between the monarchy which was sitting in Tehran and the common people on the ground. So while Shah and his family started getting rich by the petrodollars, the money could not be passed on to the common man, and the gap kept on increasing till a point where it got to a point where, the common people were up in arms, because obviously the poverty was very high, because Iran is a very big country. It has a substantial rural population, and that substantial rural population was always living in poverty. And then the kind of lifestyle, you can say, which the Shah promoted in Iran didn't go very well with the large population of Iran at that time as well. He would talk about modernization, about nightclubs, about all that thing. So basically, what they thought, that it was an invasion, the Western invasion on a Persian culture. That's what the larger people thought. That is why when the revolution happened, that is one of the precursors of it. Obviously, the economics was a big part of it, but this was also a big part of it as well, because they thought the revolution happened against the Shah, one, because of the economic discontent, and obviously what happened in the 70s, the way Iran was given, the petrodollars were coming in, there was poverty, people were predominantly Shia. They still followed their religion. They thought that there is a cultural misappropriation happening. Shah is trying to put a lot of Western culture, to bring in a lot of Western culture on a traditional Persian culture, over a traditional Persian culture. So that there was a lot of reasons for Shah to be ousted, and that is why Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini was the religious leader. He started this from 60, 63, 64. Right, he was arrested, he was released, then he was exiled. He lived in Iraq, in Mosul, for a very long time. He was exiled there. So, but he kept on going on against the Shah and keep the religiosity going on. But then there is something else also which is very, very important. Before the Iranian Revolution, if you remember, the siege of Makkah. Right, that also played a very big role into the Iranian Revolution, because if you see at that time, the whole 70s period, this resurgence of Islam was happening, whether it was in Saudi Arabia, whether it was in Iran, whether it was in, things in Pakistan.
In India, actually.
India, Pakistan, Kashmir, all these areas. So there was this rise of revolutionary kind of Islamism, a resurgent Islamism coming back into power. So that is also which played a role of its own. And that's when Khomeini basically came into power. And Khomeini basically came into power promising, better jobs, promising equality, promising many things. But at the end of the day, he turned out to be a worse ruler than, I would say, the Shah, because what Shah also did is, many people don't realize that he was extremely autocratic. Right? So there was no politics involved, there was no politician involved. His secret police was extremely brutal. So there were a lot of torture, a lot of jails, a lot of murders of his political rivals. So there was a lot of repression and regression in the society happening from the top down. He did do the White Revolution, which they usually call the land reforms and all that, but it largely didn't go well. Because the moment he got he did those. The people who actually went through the revolution became his political opponents as well. They started having political opinion as well, which was not very favorable for the Shah. They didn't really thank him for that. So it didn't really go well for him. The oil money was not being distributed entirely. It was only within his family. His family earned billions and billions of dollars. His cousins, extended cousins, sisters, brothers, But apart from that, the larger population was still agrarian. The larger population was still very, and you can say, living in poverty. And that is what he was. Yeah, and yes, and then, when people see what happens, when people start blaming, then they had this anti-Western idea because they thought it's Shah has been bought by the Americans into Iran. So they started having this anti-Western outlook towards US and other countries. Mossadegh became a hero, and you know how it goes.
Right, but so okay, so the Shah was getting unpopular amongst his people, which is fine. But how did he become a villain when it came to the oil and the OPEC? How did that happen then?
Yeah, he didn't become. He became a villain for his people because he amassed a lot, billions of dollars. But at the end of the day, if you are you're running a country and you're making money for yourself, but your people are living in abject poverty, then obviously you are the villain. So that is exactly what happened with Shah. So he made a lot of money during the 70s. The Americans backed him because Americans were stuck in the Vietnam War, and they wanted somebody to take care of the region. So they armed. That is when you see these American F-14 Tomcat, these fighters and all that, these cutting edge fighters of that time. Iran was the first to receive them. So the Americans militarily made Iran very strong. The Americans, petrodollars were flowing into Iran. But at the end of the day, the economy was in shambles. People were in poverty. And the Shah was living a life of...
So you think that is also one of the reasons he became unpopular amongst the neighboring Arab countries, which are the other oil-producing
not
Arab
for the
countries?
neighboring Arab countries more, but he became very unpopular for his own people. That is what ousted him. It is not the neighboring countries which ousted him. It is his own people who ousted him, because at the end of the day, there is only much you can take from an aristocrat or from a monarch. And, because the Iranians had tasted Mossadegh, they had tasted a democratic prime minister. So they found it extremely choking. And once, the aspirations of people are not met, the basic needs of people are not met, especially in rural areas there. Iran was still quite, the rural-urban disparity was quite big. So in that sense, then people had no other option. So all you needed was opium of religion to oust him. And that is exactly what happened.
That is exactly how the 1917 Islamic Revolution happened. Right. So now that after that the Ayatollah comes to the power, they have been ruled by the religious leaders since 79 now, right? Now, how does the current warlike situation that is unfolding in the Middle East, how does that what does that lead to now? Do you think, is this going to bring back the Shah? Because that's what there is the chatter on the internet, that he might be brought back. Or how do you think this is now going to...
See, the point is, if Americans cry about democracy, then how do they bring a monarch back?
Correct.
Right? And Shah is somebody who might sound very good, speaks good English, but has lived 60% of his life in US. He was, I think, 17, 18 or 19 when he left Iran. He has never been to Iran. He's not popular with the people of Iran. His statements are not in Persian, they are in English. He cannot connect with people. He has no administrative experience, right? So one, to assume that Shah is going to come back and Iran is going to be fine, I think it's a big miscalculation. It will be playing with fire, because I don't think people will be ready to accept him. They might have a local leader,
Right.
and they might back him. But I don't think getting Shah back into
It might feel like a
Iran,
parachuting.
I
Correct.
think it's going to backfire big time on Western world.
Right. Now tell me one thing. What does Iran have anything against? What does it have against the Israel?
I'll answer this question very directly.
Right.
It's the Muslim versus the Jew, nothing else.
Right.
It's the scriptures which dictate
Correct.
you against Israel. So Israel is a mortal enemy, as much as anybody would want to call it something else, but I'll call it out directly.
Right.
And it's not that they have been having a problem with Israel now. They have been having a problem with Israel since 90s. They have been, funding these terrorist organizations
Which
who
is
have
what I was
carried
coming
out
to. Because Iran
attacks.
hasn't directly been involved in the conflict as such. They've been supporting Hezbollah and the other anti-Israeli groups surrounding Israel, but never really got this direct till recently. So, but again, that brings me to to the Shia versus Sunni situation as well. The other Middle Eastern countries don't really seem that keen uh, in being part of this conflict as of now.
Well, they don't. It's not that they are not keen. It's just that they're silent,
Right.
right? So if you look at the war going on now, there is no way Israel can get into an Iranian territory and bomb Iran unless and until it's passing through some of these Sunni countries. You need tankers in the air. You need refueling of your jet fighters. Your jet fighters can't do one sortie from Israel to Iran without any refueling. So that refueling is happening somewhere. It's happening over Pakistan. It is happening over Gulf. It is happening over Jordan. It is happening over Iraq. It is happening everywhere. Right. So all these countries are just being silently watching and being a silent partner to the Israel and the American, you know, war against the Iranians.
Right. So they see Iran as a bigger enemy. Is it what you would say?
I don't know why they see Iran as a bigger enemy. See, I will say something, Nirva, and you have to understand something. How is Jolani okay, Haqqani okay, Pakistan with a nuclear weapon okay, and Iran not okay with you? Iran is the bigger enemy. Why is it so? Why have you have to understand why Iran is being doing what it has been doing in the region. If you remember Bashir al-Assad and the Syrian war for independence when the ISIS came in, right? A lot of Americans actually backed ISIS to basically take out Bashir al-Assad. Had the Russians not stepped in at the right moment, then in 2016, Syria would have fallen. Syria would have fallen either to ISIS or to Al Qaeda. And they have handed it over to Al Qaeda practically by giving it to Jolani, right? So, but yes, Iran is a mortal threat not only to Israel, but then you have these Gulf countries who would like to see Iran perish because Iran is the only Shiite
So
state.
it's the faith which makes
Yeah,
them
so
correct drives them.
it's a very complex situation in the Middle East at the moment. It's a situation which is not going to end happily at all. It's a very worrisome situation which is happening because on one side you have the Sunni extremism, right? One side you have Turkey, who would be happy to see Iran diminishing and then exert its own influence into the region. You will have Qatar, you will have Saudi Arabia, right? All of them, and then you have all these extremism and radicalization which has been brewing in the Middle East for last 50 years. So it's gonna play out. So taking out Israel, then what next?
Right. The
Right?
the Sunni
Because
extremism then gets
yeah,
moved to
because
power.
they,
Correct.
for them, Israel is a threat again. They would also like to take out Israel. You're just buying time. You're not addressing the root cause. So, Israel should have a nuclear weapon? Absolutely not. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. So, neither can Pakistan. Right? So, you will have to address this problem in a very holistic approach. You can't keep on fighting one place to another. You destroyed Iran. You destroyed Iraq. You went after Saddam saying, the world will be a better place, Middle East
Yeah,
will
yeah.
be a
The
much better
weapons of
place
mass destruction.
once the weapon of mass
Correct.
destruction, and we know what has happened there.
Correct.
Right? Now you're using the same theory saying that the
Iran has
Middle East is going to
nuclear.
be a very peaceful place once Khomeini is go. The reality is not going to be that way. We all know that. The reality is very, very different of what is happening because if this war expands, it
Right.
has huge repercussions. You might have Iran bombing, Gulf countries because they are giving support. If the Americans get into this war, this is going to flare up the entire
Which
region.
brings me to the next question. Donald Trump has been tweeting, at least he has been tweeting about it, how he kind of low-key threatening Iran. uh, Meanwhile, he also had lunch with Pakistan's Field Marshal Asim Munir, right? And again, there have been reports that Pakistan aided in refueling the Israeli jets towards Iran because
No,
neighboring nation.
we have OSINT, we have radars, not radars. Sorry, yeah, you have from radar app. You have
Right.
American planes doing refueling and all that. Yeah.
Right. So that again brings me to India also sought to kind of, dismantle the nuclear weaponry in Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. So how is that any different than what Israel is doing to Iran?
Okay. One, you have to understand that from the Donald Trump perspective.
Right.
See, the problem with Americans is if they go all in, right, they are going to flare up the region. As I said, there are about 40 to 50,000 troops US has in the Middle East at the moment. They have bases in in Iraq. They have base in Oman. They have base in Qatar. They become legitimate targets, right? Then if this flare ups and Iran starts hitting, let's say they bomb Oman, they bomb Qatar, they start throwing missiles towards Saudi, imagine what is going to happen in the region. It's going to be chaotic, right? So one calculation is that how can they contain Iran from not flaring it up to a larger conflict, regional conflict. So I think that is why Donald Trump has made a lot of tweets. He went into the situation room, but he came out empty-handed. He didn't go ahead with that. Right now, Israelis have tried to take out the nuclear sites, right? But the Israelis don't have the weapons to take out the nuclear place.
Right.
It's only the Americans who have what you call the mother of all bombs, which only the B-2 bombers or the B-52s can carry. The Israelis don't have the tech, the Israelis don't have the weapons. The Americans have never given those weapons to the Israelis. So Israel is incapable of doing anything to any nuclear facility, despite apart from taking out the nuclear scientists or damaging the superficial structure where there is. But they cannot reach the reactors. And that is where the Americans are needed. That is where the Americans need to come into the war. But then it opens up a regional flare. You have no idea how China is going to react. You have no idea how Russia is going to react to this war. You have no idea how Iran is going to respond to this. Because obviously, you don't know if the Iranians start throwing missiles at Pakistan, if Pakistan becomes, starts giving too much
Correct.
to the Americans, right? You have no idea where this can go. This can actually flare up quite a bit. And that is the worry. That is everything. That is why, Macron said very rightly that ousting Khomeini is not going to be the solution for this. And I think he was very right on it. The Europeans realized the risk of a larger flare-up in the region, and I think that is where it is stuck at the moment. But then, answering your question on India we never tried to take out any nuclear strike.
Right.
We didn't hit any Pakistan's. See, with India and Pakistan, we have a nuclear treaty. We exchange our lists every year. Whatever is on the Pakistanis list, we have not stuck even a single nuclear strike of Pakistan. We didn't try to take out. We tried to take out the terror hideouts. We tried to take out their aid field capacities, but we never stuck on any nuclear capacities. So no, we didn't do that.
Right. Okay, so that brings me to the last bit of this. I want to know, see, Iran, as we said, it's the religiously motivated country as of now, correct? And as is Pakistan. For them, for Pakistan, it is their Islam identity is their foremost identity, when it comes to anything else. So, is Pakistan betraying the Iranians'
No.
faith? Is it?
See, honestly, two things with Pakistan. Pakistan runs with the hares and hunts with the hounds. They have always done that. But Pakistan is not betraying the Ummah because they don't consider Shias to be part of the Ummah. They consider Sunni to be part of the Ummah. That is why I said that all the other majoritarian Sunni countries in the Gulf are silent watchers, and they are silently even helping the Israelis and the Americans, just looking the other way when they want to use their airspace and whatnot. So they're all silent. So Pakistan is doing the same. Pakistan might make a lot of noise that Iranians are our iron brothers and we have this and we have that, but the reality is last year the Iranians carried out a surgical strike inside Pakistan, right? What was that about? So their relationship is nothing, anything but brotherly. It's a superficial relationship. Pakistan would love to see Iran getting destroyed as much as Iran would love Pakistan getting destroyed.
It's very interesting because while Iran is supporting the anti-Israeli groups like the Hamas, as is Pakistan, and it's just very...
Because unfortunately, without coming out derogatory,
Right.
I'm putting it very clearly. The Jew is a common enemy,
Right.
whether it's a Shia or a Sunni. For
Correct.
them, a Jewish state should not exist, and that is the reality. Right. So Pakistan, if Israel thinks that nuclear from Iran is a threat, they also need to see a bit away and think that Pakistani nukes can also become a threat. The day
Right.
Pakistan becomes into a position where they will be able to carry out a nuclear attack on Israel, they will not stop from it. So Pakistan is as dangerous as Iran is. Syria is as dangerous as Gaza is. So for Israelis, that's what I said. You cannot keep on fighting wars in the region for next 100 years, trying to go from one place to another. You eliminate Khomeinis today. What are you going to do with Turkey when they are going to come, with their own Muslim Brotherhood agenda and their own Ottoman Empire ideas? They are going to challenge your state as well. Then what are you going to do? You're going to go to war with Turkey? Right? So you need to find a solution to this. And the solution is not in extremism. Right? So if they are thinking that by handing these places to extremists like Jolani, I think that is what they need to rethink on their policy and think how they can get fairly, I would say, secular governments around. But looking at the region, the way radicalization is, the way people are, and you cannot, with the Western idea is not exactly, the Westernization is not an answer to radicalization. People can still be modern. Now in Iran, people talk about, and I see a lot of noise on social media, oh, they don't let their women, you have to cover your hair. But the Iranians send their women to universities. They're teachers, they're doctors, they're engineers. Taliban has locked them in the room. So has the Syrian Julani. You don't talk about that. You don't see that as a radicalization. So, this hypocrisy has to stop somewhere because we have social media today. Everybody is aware of it. These things worked maybe 20 years before, but now they don't. Everybody asks you questions, sees through the hypocrisy as well. So there has to be a solution, and that solution has to come through dialogue. They have to sit on table. Maybe they need to get Russia involved into a dialogue. They need to get China involved into a dialogue, right? And they need to find a solution to this. War is not a solution.
Right. War is never the solution. And I think...
Though we are sitting in the war room.
Right. And having said that, I think a stable Middle East is the need of the hour. I think... let's see how things go further, and I think we're kind of done with the wars. It's
Look, this is unfortunately a situation which you would not like to see a war, because then it affects you as well, it affects India as well. Right. It's when the Middle East burns, the flames come right till India. Now,
absolutely.
Imagine the Gulf countries going to war with Iran. It's a nightmarish situation for us.
Right.
It's a nightmare situation for the world. It's a very bad situation for the Europeans. They have so many of immigrants living inside their borders.
So many. Correct.
So it will have repercussions for the entire region, not only for the entire region, for the entire world. Your supplies are going to be hit. Everything, it will be a upheaval. So it's not a very, very good solution. And then you don't even have a solution which is coming out of it. So you need to get this new. You need to make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear bomb. But I don't think dismantling Iran and then moving forward somewhere is going to be the answer. It's going to add to a lot of radicalization in the area.
I think the world leaders can do with a bit of meditation and yoga.
I think they can do a better job. They need to put their heads together. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is a huge decline in American politics. I mean, if you have Trump, you have Kamala Harris, you have Joe Biden, there's leadership crisis in US.
Right.
I think what US needs is a very clear-headed, comparatively young people who can come and who have a vision. I don't think these people...
And not absolutely unhinged.
No, you don't have these unhinged politicians.
Correct.
I think it's going a bad way.
Yeah. Right. Hopefully things shall calm down soon and we'll have new topics to talk on.
I think we'll have this topic to talk on more, because I don't see this ending very soon.
You don't end. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see next week how things have progressed. Yeah. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
I'll see you next week.
Pleasure always.